I am from Records, from Old Spice and Glasses. I am from the Brick Ranch. Grill smoke fills the alley. I am from the Clematis, the swamp white oak whose long gone limbs I remember as if they were my own. I'm from Lobster Tails on Christmas Eve and Shortness, from Joe and Mary. I'm from Offering a Drink and Take Your Shoes Off. I'm from Short Tempers. I'm from Be Aware of Your Surroundings and Manja Manja and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I'm from Apple Picking. I'm from Oak Park and Italy. Pumpkin pie and pizza. From the time the petting zoo and my sister pushed Mom over the edge at Busch Gardens. My grandfather's army uniform, pressed, clean, pristine, standing guard in the cedar closet. I am from candles, from chairs and spatulas. I am from the decrepit apartment, soft and cool linoleum peels on the kitchen floor. I am from the snake plant, the pin oak, whose long gone limbs I remember as if they were my own. I'm from midnight mass and black hair, from Raphael and Olga. I'm from sleeping, sitting up, and always leave a note, and from interrupting. I'm from Pobrecita and Que Malcriada, and A Mal Tiempo, Buena Cara. I'm from tamales. I'm from Belmont Cragen and Mexico. Menudo and quesadillas. From the time I got scared at the aquarium and had to be carried down the long front steps. My sister's picture on the dresser. Just her smiling eyes and the secrets she never told. So, excuse me. Um, I have learned a lot during this class. As I've said in a few of my posts, I think I had a pretty standard middle class upbringing. White. My town was sort of diverse. I mean, I knew that there were ESL kids. I had a few in my class, but I never really. I was definitely the majority. We There were some black kids, there were some Latino kids, but there weren't. It wasn't very diverse as far as that's concerned. So I didn't have a very strong experience um, trying to relate to any of those kids. But my dad did work for CPS, so he would talk about it a little bit. Though I think most of the kids in his neighborhood were probably long-term English learners. So by the time they got to him, he didn't really have to do a whole lot of ESL teaching. Um, Regardless, uh, I have to be honest, this was one of the things that sort of scared me about going into teaching, just because I did take some Spanish in high school, and I can read Spanish okay to an extent. I have, maybe a middling um, vocabulary as far as that's concerned, uh, but I don't do very well speaking it to people or understanding it when they speak. It's easier for me to process it while I read it. So the speed at which a lot of Spanish speakers speak is a little hard for me to catch up with sometimes. So I was a little afraid going into teaching that, I didn't know how I was going to do this. I didn't know how I would address ESL kids or ELLs, or how much I would have to teach or how much I would have to know about that. And I have learned a lot in the past couple of weeks. Um, One of the biggest things for me was thinking that, English immersion was something that was really what we should be doing, not from any sort of like philosophical standpoint, just because that's what I thought what was done. So I had no idea that there were other methods or any of the things that we've covered. The entire book has been really informative in terms of giving us strategies, um, giving us sample units that explain how to uh, adjust content for English language learners. Um, and things that are as simple as like letting kids speak in their home language. Um, to me, I had never really thought about it before, but you know, it really struck a chord when I was reading that if you were learning a separate language, how jarring would it be to go to, Japan and only be spoken to in Japanese and not be allowed to use English to help facilitate your learning of Japanese. Um, so that made a lot of sense to me, and sort of clicked in terms of uh, realizing that okay, we don't have to just force this on kids. We can sort of guide them along a little bit more, um, and so that's more of the practical teaching applications. I will definitely be revisiting the book because it was a lot of information that I tried uh, to you know internalize, but it's just it's a long there's this wasn't a whole lot of time to do that, which I think you recognized and commented on. But in terms of the cultural aspects, I I mean, I'm not a first generation immigrant, but I'm third on my dad's side and on my maternal grandfather's side as well. Um, uh, yeah, third. Um, so I do have a little bit more of a connection to immigrants than some of my classmates when I was growing up. A lot of my friends didn't. I mean, I had some friends whose relatives fought in the Civil War, and that was something that I never did, obviously, because my family all came here in the mass. Most three-fourths of my grandparents' families came here um, in the mass immigration at the turn of the 20th century. So I had a little bit of a different perspective in terms of keeping that like cultural heritage relevant to me. Granted, it's still white. I mean, it was European. So I have had the benefit of seeing myself or people like me on screen in movies, part of mass media for my entire life. So I had been aware of, the importance of that change that we've started to see slowly in the past several years. Um, but in terms of school, um, I hadn't thought about it trickling down to school. I guess I had this preconceived notion that we just teach these books to everybody all the time, or we only talk about these things in history, or and there's obviously other aspects to it that you could bring in, maybe a culturally relevant book here, or talking about a specific episode with Chicano history there, but it really made a lot of sense to me to hear that kids, minority kids were most likely disengaged because they didn't see themselves in the material or they couldn't relate to the material. And it's very old school to say like school's not supposed to be relatable. This is the stuff that you're supposed to learn. And I don't really subscribe to that. I am sort of a natural learner. I've never really had an issue with learning, but I do understand that not everybody's like that. So to try and get kids engaged, I think we should do whatever we can, because the learning aspect is really what's important about it. We're not there to entertain them. And I think that's a difference that a lot of people don't realize, or they assume it's entertaining. By making things relatable, you're just entertaining kids, or that's what interest means. And I disagree with that. I think it is um, by by giving them something that they can see themselves in, it opens their eyes to um, lots of different things or possibilities that maybe they had never thought of because they've just never seen it. All of the stuff that we talked about, from the single story to the Anderson Cooper documentary at the beginning of class, I think um, is very important. I hadn't necessarily thought about it beforehand, but the young adult literature that I read, actually I loved. I was really inspired by it. It made me definitely want to go further with um, picking some books to have, on my shelf for kids who want a recommendation, or just to have them there as a conversation piece. Uh, this is a good book. You should read it. It's got kids like you in it. You might really like it. Those are things that a lot of kids don't read because they've either had, trouble with reading comprehension in the past, or they're tired of reading about white people. And I get that, and I want to give them an alternative. I want to get them excited about stuff. I love reading, and I read the two books that I read. I would never have read in a million years if not for this class. Not because I, have anything against it, but just because I would never read uh, YA Latinx literature just on a Thursday. But I'm really glad that I did. It is something that I really want to share with kids. I want them to see that there are things out there for them, and it's getting better every single year. There's more and more. Things are more accessible to them. We're still not where we should be, obviously, but those are the kinds of things that hopefully, they might read a book that has a character just like them in it, and they all of a sudden want to find more. And that's, to me, that's amazing. That's the goal, to have kids want to engage and want to find more, and just hunger for that. Those stories, the learning, um, all of that. So to uh, to maintain a balance of and openness for myself. I know my experience is going to be different than a lot of the kids that I teach, but I, even in my real life, not just the education life, I try to listen really hard, um, and I'm a big uh, proponent of listening to students, being co-learners, and letting them tell me what they need in so many words, or so many ways. So yeah, I think way over the time here, but hopefully that was informative, and this has been a great class. So thank you very much.